"Get out of my house, you insane lunatic." Jake's venomous words echo incessantly in my mind, piercing through the fog of disbelief and despair that envelops me as I sit alone on the curb. My 57th birthday, a milestone I had hoped would be marked with love and warmth, now feels like a cruel joke. Tears stream uncontrollably down my face, each drop a testament to the profound ache in my heart. The sting of Jake's harsh hands, shoving me to the cold, unforgiving ground, still lingers on my skin, a cruel reminder of the betrayal I've suffered. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The icy, disdainful look in his eyes as he cast me out like a piece of trash is a sight that will forever be etched into my memory. This is the bitter reality of my birthday, my flesh and blood, the son I devoted my life to, treating me with such heartless contempt, as if all the love, care, and sacrifices I made for him meant absolutely nothing. And now, thanks to that wretched woman he foolishly married, he can't even bear to see me. Amber, just the mention of her name sends a surge of rage coursing through me. From the very moment Jake brought Amber into our lives, I felt an ominous cloud descending. The way she looked at me with barely concealed contempt, as though I were merely an obstacle in her path to getting what she wanted, was alarming. Her constant whispers in Jake's ear, subtly poisoning his perception of me, were a clear indication of her manipulative nature. Despite my fervent warnings and my heartfelt pleas for him to see through her false charm, Jake was ensnared by his blind lust and delusion, convinced that her affection was genuine and unconditional. What a fool he was. The only thing Amber truly adores is her reflection. And now, because of her, I have been stripped of everything that once brought meaning to my life: my beloved son, my precious grandchildren, and the family to which I dedicated every ounce of my being. Cast aside like yesterday's refuse, my heart breaks under the weight of this unjust treatment. As I sit there, consumed by my misery, a car approaches, momentarily interrupting my sorrowful reverie. The window rolls down, revealing the deeply concerned face of my closest friend, Maggie. Her eyes, filled with genuine worry and compassion, lock onto mine. "What on earth happened? Why are you sitting out here in such a state?" Her voice trembles with the depth of her concern. I struggle to find the strength to respond, my voice breaking with each word. "Jake. He kicked me out. He called me crazy and said it's his house now." Maggie's eyes widen in shock, and her expression shifts to one of fierce determination. "He did what? On your birthday? This is unacceptable. Get in the car right now. You're coming home with me." I shuffle into the passenger seat, my body numb and heavy with despair as Maggie drives us away from the scene of my humiliation. She steals frequent, worried glances at me, her face set in a determined frown. "This is beyond disgraceful, Diane. Jake has crossed a line that cannot be ignored. There will be consequences for his actions, and he and that wretched woman need to learn that cruelty and betrayal will not go unchallenged." I shake my head slowly, a deep sense of resignation settling over me. "What can I possibly do, Mags? He's an adult. He's made his decision." Maggie's lips press into a tight, resolute line, her eyes sparkling with a fierce, unwavering resolve. "Perhaps he is an adult, but that doesn't mean he gets to act with such impunity. You're his mother, for heaven's sake. It's high time he and that dreadful woman understand that their actions have consequences." I turn to her, my heart aching with confusion. "What are you suggesting?" A slow, knowing smile spreads across Maggie's face, a glimmer of vengeance in her eyes. "I'm suggesting, my dear, that it's time to take back what's rightfully yours. It's time for a taste of revenge, and I know exactly who can help us make that happen. We won't let Jake and Amber think they can get away with this injustice." As we race into the dark of night, a flicker of an unfamiliar emotion stirs within me, a long-buried sense of hope. Hope that perhaps, just perhaps, I might find a way to make Jake and Amber face the consequences of their callous actions. Maybe finally karma will catch up with them, and they will understand the depth of the pain they've inflicted upon me. The day had begun with a glimmer of promise. It was my birthday, and despite the crushing disappointment from Jake, I was determined to salvage some joy. I spent the morning meticulously tidying up the house, adorning it with cheerful decorations, and preparing a special meal. I even went out of my way to purchase a cake from the local bakery, one that Jake had always loved since childhood. Around noon, with a flutter of hope and apprehension in my chest, I dialed Jake's number. To my surprise, he answered the phone. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" His voice was guarded, lacking the warmth I had hoped for. I took a deep breath, mustering all my courage. "Well, I was wondering if you, Amber, and the kids would like to join me for dinner tonight. It's my birthday, and I thought it would be nice to spend some family time together." There was a long, agonizing pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background, as though he was discussing my invitation with someone. Finally, he replied, "Yeah, okay, we can do that." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "What time would work for you?" I asked, eager to finalize the plans. "How about 6 p.m.? I'm making your favorite lasagna." "Sure. See you then." The call ended abruptly before I could say anything more. The rest of the day was a blur of frenetic preparation and hopeful anticipation. By 6 p.m., everything was in place. The lasagna was bubbling in the oven, the table was set with care, and the cake was prominently displayed on the counter, its sweetness a symbol of the love I wanted to share. Just as the clock struck 6, the doorbell rang. My heart leaped with joy as I hurried to open the door, a radiant smile stretching across my face. But as I pulled it open, my heart sank into a pit of despair. Jake stood on the doorstep, his face etched with a deep frown. Beside him, Amber's lips were twisted into a contemptuous sneer. The children were conspicuously absent. "Where are the kids?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady despite the rising panic. Amber's harsh laughter cut through the air. "We decided it was best if they didn't come. We wouldn't want them exposed to any more of your toxic influence." Her words hit me like a physical blow. "Toxic influence? What on earth are you talking about?" I asked, bewildered and hurt. Amber stepped forward, her finger jabbing towards me with malicious intent. "Don't play innocent, Diane. We all know how you poisoned Jake against his father, how you guilt-tripped and manipulated him. It's no surprise he wants nothing to do with you." The sting of her words brought tears to my eyes. I turned to Jake, silently pleading for him to speak up, to stand by me. But he remained silent, his arms crossed, his gaze unyielding. "That's not true," I choked out, my voice breaking. "I've always loved and supported Jake. I would never intentionally hurt him." Amber's eyes gleamed with a malevolent glint. "Stop with the martyr act. You're just a selfish, vindictive woman who can't accept that Jake has moved on with his life, that he chose me over you." Her words ignited a fire within me. Without thinking, I lunged forward, my hand poised to slap the smirk off her face. But Jake was quicker. He stepped between us, his grip vice-like as he seized my wrist. "Don't you dare touch my wife," he growled, his voice filled with anger. "You're pathetic, you know that? You orchestrated this whole birthday charade, trying to worm your way back into our lives. Well, it's not going to work. We're done with you." With that, he shoved me roughly backward, sending me stumbling. I caught myself on the door frame, tears now flowing freely down my face. "Jake, please," I whispered, my voice cracking with desperation. "I'm your mother," but he simply shook his head, his eyes cold and devoid of warmth. "Not anymore. Come on, Amber, let's go." As they walked away, leaving me alone in the darkness, the full weight of their betrayal and cruelty crashed down on me. I stood there, watching with a sense of helplessness as Jake and Amber turned their backs and walked away, slamming the door with a force that reverberated through the empty house. The sound was a harsh punctuation mark on this dreadful birthday, amplifying the sense of finality that had settled over me. I was left alone, the heartache splitting me into a million jagged pieces. I couldn't gauge how long I remained rooted to the spot. Lost in the aftermath of their cruelty. Was it minutes? Hours? Time had melded into a blurred haze of torment. The ache in my chest was unbearable, an abyss of sorrow that threatened to consume me completely. Slowly, I managed to shut the door, my hands trembling uncontrollably. With a heavy heart, I made my way to the couch, collapsing onto the cushions as racking sobs overtook me. How could he do this to me? I wondered aloud, my voice a fragile whisper of anguish. My son, the one I had poured my love and care into for years, had treated me as though I were worthless. The cruel irony of it all stung deeply. The jarring ring of my phone pulled me from my misery. I glanced at the screen and saw Maggie's name, a beacon of hope amidst the storm of my despair. For a fleeting moment, I contemplated ignoring the call, not wanting to burden her with my suffering. But the thought of facing this nightmare alone was unbearable. I answered, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. Hello? Diane, what happened? Did something go wrong with Jake? Maggie's voice, filled with genuine concern, was the catalyst that made me unravel further. I poured out the entire painful episode in a torrent of gasps and sobs. Maggie listened with patience and empathy, her words a balm for my wounded soul. Enough is enough, Maggie said resolutely once I had finished recounting the ordeal. Jake and Amber can't keep treating you like this. They need to face the consequences of their actions. I dabbed at my eyes, trying to regain some semblance of composure. What do you mean? I mean, it's time to take action. They think they can walk all over you, but it's time they learn otherwise. You're a strong woman, Diane. It's time to show it. Her words, though meant to console me, sparked a flicker of defiance within me. Amidst the suffocating pain, a spark of anger ignited. Maggie was right. I couldn't just sit idly by and let this injustice fester. I needed to reclaim some control over my life. All right, I said, my voice firmer now. What do you have in mind? I could almost hear Maggie's smile through the phone. Meet me at the diner in an hour. There's someone I want you to meet. Trust me, he's going to be a valuable ally. An hour later, I found myself sitting across from Maggie in a cozy booth at the local diner. Maggie's eyes twinkled with a mischievous glint as she sipped her coffee. So, who is this person you're so excited about? I asked, my curiosity piqued. Just then, the bell above the door jingled, and Maggie's face lit up. There he is now, Maggie said, waving at someone behind me. I turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man approaching our table. He had a rugged, no-nonsense demeanor, the kind that suggested he had navigated through his fair share of adversity. Diane, this is my brother Carlos, Maggie introduced, gesturing for him to sit. Carlos nodded at me, his eyes sharp and assessing. Maggie has briefed me on what happened. I'm sorry to hear about what your son and his wife did. That's a tough break. I shrugged, attempting to mask the depth of my anguish with a veneer of casualness, though the pain still twisted in my gut. It's as bad as it sounds, but Maggie believes you might be able to help. Carlos met my gaze with a steady, reassuring look. Let's see what we can do about it. No one should have to endure what you've been through. We'll make sure Jake and Amber face the reality of their actions. At that moment, as Carlos's words of resolve reached me, I felt a flicker of hope, an ember of determination igniting within the depths of my sorrow. For the first time since the door had slammed shut, I felt a glimmer of empowerment, knowing that perhaps, just perhaps, I would not have to face this alone. Carlos leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. His eyes locked onto mine, revealing a dangerous glint. From what Maggie shared with me, I'm betting Amber has some secrets buried in her past. A shiver of anticipation ran through me. What do you mean? Carlos's smile widened, slow and menacing. I'm saying let me dig into Amber's past. If there's any dirt to be found, I'll uncover it. Once we have that leverage, karma will have a way of coming full circle. I leaned back, my mind racing with the possibilities. Could this work? Could I finally make Jake and Amber pay for their cruelty? The confidence in Carlos's eyes gave me the push I needed. I'm in. Let's do this. Carlos nodded, his expression satisfied. Excellent. Give me a week. I'll keep you posted. As he stood to leave, I felt a surge of renewed purpose. They thought they could break me, but they were mistaken. It was time for me to take action. The week felt interminable, each day dragging by with an excruciating slowness. I busied myself with chores around the house, ran errands, and tried to distract myself from the constant churn of anxiety and anticipation. I wondered about the details Carlos would uncover. Would it be enough to force Jake and Amber to confront their actions? Maggie stayed in touch daily, her words of encouragement a lifeline amidst the turmoil. Her support was the only thing keeping me grounded as I grappled with my emotions. At last, the 7th day arrived, and with it, a call from Carlos. Diane, it's Carlos. I've got something. Can you come to my office in an hour? My heart raced, and I swallowed hard. I'll be there. I arrived at Carlos's office 15 minutes early, my nerves on edge. Maggie was already there, pacing anxiously in the small waiting area. She enveloped me in a tight hug as soon as I walked in. Are you ready for this? She asked, her gaze searching mine. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. As ready as I'll ever be. Carlos emerged from his office, his face set in a grim expression. Come on in, ladies. We followed him into his office and took our seats opposite his desk. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Carlos opened a manila folder, spreading out a series of documents and photographs. So, I did some digging into Amber's background, he began, his tone grave. And let me tell you, she's not the angel she pretends to be. He slid a document towards me. First off, Amber has a criminal record embezzlement from a previous job. She managed to avoid jail time, but it was a serious issue. I stared at the document, a mugshot of Amber glaring back at me. Her eyes, even in this old photo, were unmistakably cold. But that's not all, Carlos continued. I also discovered she's a person of interest in the death of her ex-boyfriend. Maggie gasped beside me, and I felt a punch to my gut. What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling. Carlos handed me a newspaper clipping. 2 years ago, her ex was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The police suspected foul play, but they couldn't pin anything on her. Amber was the last person to see him alive. I skimmed the article, my eyes catching phrases like suspicious death and ongoing investigation. My mind struggled to reconcile this with the woman my son had married. So what does this mean? Maggie asked, breaking the silence. Carlos leaned back, steepling his fingers. It means we have leverage. If this information were to become public, Amber's life would unravel, her reputation, her marriage, everything. A spark of hope ignited within me. So what do we do now? Carlos's smile broadened. Now we use it. We make it known that we have this information, and that if Amber wants to keep it from going public, she needs to convince Jake to make things right with you. Maggie's eyes gleamed with resolve. And if she refuses? Carlos shrugged. Then we go to the police. We push to reopen the investigation into her ex's death. Either way, Amber will face the consequences of her actions. The plan was set. I felt a surge of vindication, a sense of empowerment that had been missing for far too long. With Carlos's help, I finally had a way to hold Jake and Amber accountable. This was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring that the pain they had inflicted would not go unanswered. I sat there, stunned and trying to process everything that had happened. Could it really be this straightforward? Could I truly make Amber face the consequences of her actions for turning Jake against me? The determined expressions on Maggie and Carlos's faces gave me strength. They believed I deserved justice, and for the first time since that awful birthday, I believed it too. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firm and resolute. "Let's make them pay." Carlos's smile turned predatory. "Excellent. Give me a day to set everything in motion. By this time tomorrow, Amber won't know what hit her." As we left the office, Maggie squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing, Diane. Don't ever doubt that." I squeezed back, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and righteous anger. They had picked the wrong woman to cross. Amber was about to learn that lesson the hard way. True to his word, Carlos called me the next day. "It's done," he said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "I've sent all the information to Amber along with a message letting her know that if she doesn't want it to go public, she needs to convince Jake to make amends with you." A thrill of anticipation mixed with nervousness surged through me. "Do you think it will work?" "Only one way to find out," Carlos replied. "But trust me, with the dirt we have on her, she'd be crazy not to comply." I hung up, my mind racing. Would Amber really cave? Would she pressure Jake to apologize and make things right? A part of me hoped fervently, even as another part whispered that it might be too good to be true. Hours passed with no word. I paced my living room, jumping at every sound, convinced it was either the doorbell or the phone. As evening fell, I was about to give up and go to bed when there was a pounding at the door. My heart raced. I opened it to find Jake standing there, his face a mask of fury. "What the hell did you do?" he snarled, pushing past me into the house. I stumbled back, taken aback. "What are you talking about?" He whirled on me, eyes blazing. "Don't play dumb. Amber told me everything about the private investigator, about you digging into her past. What, did you think you could blackmail her into making me forgive you?" I stood my ground, lifting my chin defiantly. "I didn't blackmail anyone. I simply made her aware that her actions have consequences. She can't just destroy my life and expect to get away with it." Jake laughed harshly. "Destroy your life? Are you serious right now? You're the one trying to tear apart our marriage and family. First with your guilt-tripping and manipulation, and now this." A surge of anger shot through me. "I'm not the one who turned you against me, Jake. That was all Amber. She's poisoned you. Can't you see that? She's a criminal, a liar, maybe even a murderer." For a moment, Jake looked stunned, and then his expression hardened. "You're unbelievable. You think I'm going to believe your crazy accusations over my own wife, the mother of my children?" "They're not accusations, they're facts." Carlos found proof. "I don't care what your little detective friend found," Jake roared. "Amber is my wife, and I trust her. I love her, and nothing you say or do is going to change that." Tears stung my eyes, blurring my vision. "So that's it? You're choosing her over me, your own mother?" Jake's jaw clenched. "You made that choice for me when you decided to pull this stunt. I'm done with you, Mom. Done with your lies and manipulation. Stay out of our lives, or I'll make sure you regret it." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, numb, my last hope shattered. My son had chosen Amber, had chosen her over me, over everything we once had. The pain was unbearable, a deep, empty ache that settled into my bones. I sank to the floor, tears flowing freely. I had fought so hard and tried so desperately to make things right, But in the end, it hadn't mattered. Amber had won. She had taken my son, my family, and left me with nothing but the bitter taste of defeat. As I sat there, torn between the urge to comfort and the desire to lash out, Jake's broken figure loomed in my mind. I remembered the pain he had caused me, the way he had abandoned me. I straightened my spine, my voice icy. "You should have thought of that before you turned your back on me. I'm sorry, Jake, but you're on your own." I brushed past him, ignoring his pleas and apologies. He had made his choice, now he would face the consequences. A few days later, I received an unexpected call. It was Amber's mother, her voice tight with barely contained anger. "Diane, I know we've had our differences, but I need to ask a favor," Amber's mother said, her voice tight with emotion. I was taken aback. "What kind of favor?" "It's about the kids." With everything happening with Amber's case, Jake's struggling to keep up. He needs a break. I was hoping you could take the children for the weekend. I hesitated. On one hand, the thought of spending time with my grandchildren was tempting. It had been so long since I'd seen them. On the other hand, helping Jake and Amber after everything they'd done to me felt almost impossible. "Please," Diane, Amber's mother pressed, as if sensing my reluctance. "I know you love those kids. They need some stability right now, and Lord knows they won't get it from Jake or Amber." Her plea struck a chord. Despite my anger towards Jake and Amber, the children were innocent and deserved better. I sighed, my resolve crumbling. "All right," I agreed. "I'll take them for the weekend, but I'm doing this for them, not for Jake or Amber." "Of course." "Thank you, Diane. I'll let Jake know to drop them off Friday evening." True to her word, Jake arrived on my doorstep that Friday with the kids. He looked haggard, his face etched with exhaustion and worry. "Mom," he greeted me, his voice strained. "Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it." I nodded, my attention drawn to the children. They looked up at me, their eyes wide and uncertain. "Grandma," my granddaughter exclaimed, her face lighting up. She rushed forward and hugged me tightly. I returned her embrace, fighting back tears. "Hello, sweetheart. I've missed you." My grandson lingered by Jake's side, hesitant. I knelt, opening my arms. "Come here, buddy. It's okay." Slowly, he stepped into my hug, his small body trembling. My heart ached for him and his sister. Jake cleared his throat. "I'll pick them up Sunday evening. If anything comes up, just give me a call." I straightened, meeting his gaze coolly. "We'll be fine. Enjoy your weekend." With a final nod, Jake left, leaving me alone with the kids. I took a deep breath and forced a smile. Who wants pizza for dinner? The weekend was a blur of laughter, games, and storytelling. For a short time, I was able to set aside the pain and focus on the simple joy of being with my grandchildren. But as Sunday evening approached, reality began to intrude once more. Jake arrived to collect the kids, his expression guarded as they gathered their things. "Grandma, can we come stay with you again soon? We had so much fun," my granddaughter said, tugging on my hand. I smiled, smoothing her hair. "Of course, honey. Anytime you want." Jake's jaw tightened. "We should get going. Say goodbye, kids." They hugged me tightly, their little faces sad. I watched them climb into Jake's car, my heart heavy as he prepared to leave. Jake paused, turning back to me. "Listen, Mom, about what they said. I don't want you to get any ideas. This was a one-time thing." I bristled, anger flaring. "Excuse me. You think I'm trying to turn them against you?" "It wouldn't be the first time," he muttered. I saw red. "How dare you? I have done nothing but love and support those children, which is more than I can say for you and Amber. You're so wrapped up in your drama that you can't even see how much they're hurting." Jake's face flushed with anger. "You have no idea what we're going through. No idea about the stress and pressure. And whose fault is that I cut him off? You chose this, Jake. You chose Amber and all the chaos that comes with her. Don't you dare put that on me." He stared at me, his eyes cold. "This isn't over, Mom. I won't let you poison my kids against me the way you did with Dad." I watched as he drove away, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. The weekend had brought brief solace, but the underlying tension remained. The gulf between the U.S. seemed wider than ever, and the future felt uncertain. As I closed the door behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that this conflict was far from over. With that, Jake got in the car and drove away, leaving me shaking with rage and hurt. I stood there, watching until the car disappeared from view, a cold determination settling over me. If Jake wanted to play hardball, then so be it. I was done playing nice. It was time to end this once and for all. The day of Amber's trial arrived, cold and gray. I dressed with care, choosing a somber black suit that radiated quiet authority. Maggie picked me up, her face set with grim determination. "Are you ready for this?" she asked as we drove to the courthouse. I nodded, my jaw tight. "I've been ready for a long time." We met Carlos on the steps, his expression serious. "I've got a surprise for you," he said, leading us inside. "I tracked down Mark Thompson's family. They're here to testify." A surge of gratitude and vindication filled me. With their testimony, Amber's fate would be sealed. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. I took my seat behind the prosecutor's table, my heart pounding as Amber was led in, her wrists shackled. She looked pale and drawn, but her eyes still glittered with malice when they met mine. Jake sat stiffly beside her, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. I looked away, focusing on the judge as he called the court to order. The trial was a grueling emotional affair. The prosecutor laid out the evidence against Amber in damning detail, painting a picture of a cruel, calculating woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. But it was the testimony of Mark Thompson's family that truly sealed her fate. His mother, a frail, silver-haired woman, spoke of her son's kind heart and his bright future cut short. His sister wept as she recounted Amber's controlling, abusive behavior and how she had isolated Mark from his loved ones. Through it all, Amber sat stone-faced, her eyes cold and empty. Jake grew more and more agitated, his knee bouncing, his hands clenched into fists. Finally, it was time for the verdict. The jury filed back in, their faces somber. The foreman stood, clearing his throat. In the matter of the state versus Amber Wilson, on the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Amber's face drained of color, her mouth falling open in shock. Jake leaped to his feet, his chair clattering to the floor. "No," he shouted, his voice raw with anguish. "No, this is wrong. She's innocent." The judge banged his gavel, calling for order. "Mr. Wilson, control yourself, or I will have you removed from this courtroom." Jake subsided, collapsing back into his seat, his head in his hands. Amber turned to him, her expression desperate. "Jake, do something. You can't let them do this to me." But Jake wouldn't look at her, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The bailiff stepped forward, preparing to lead Amber away. I watched, a strange mix of emotions swirling within me. Triumph, yes, but also a hollow sort of sadness. It had come to this, my son, broken and humiliated, his love life in ruins. As Amber was escorted out, she turned back, her eyes locking with mine. At that moment, I saw the depth of her hatred, the venom in her soul. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice low and deadly. "I'll make you pay for this, I swear it." I met her gaze steadily, unflinching. "You've already paid, Amber. You made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences. Goodbye." With that, I turned and walked out, my head held high. It was over. Justice had been served, but even as relief washed over me, I couldn't shake the lingering unease. Jake's anguished face haunted me. Had I gone too far? Had my quest for vengeance blinded me to the collateral damage? I shook my head, pushing the doubts aside. No, Jake had made his bed, and now he would lie in it. He had chosen Amber, chosen to turn his back on me. Now he would have to live with the fallout. I stepped out into the cold, gray day, drawing my coat tighter around me. It was time to move on, to build a new life for myself, a life without Jake, without Amber's toxic influence, a life of my own making. As we reach the end of this journey, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned today. We've explored the complexities of family dynamics, the impact of personal choices, and the weight of justice in a way that deeply resonates with many of us. What insights have you gained from this story? Is there one lesson or realization that stands out to you? I encourage you to share in the comments below what you've learned and how you plan to apply this knowledge in your own life. If you liked this video, please leave your comment below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you more meaningful content.